This past season, I set a goal to myself to try to grow more of my salad greens within a reliable schedule. In previous years, I had grown lots of lettuce in early spring, only to be confronted by a glut of perfectly formed lettuce heads that were fast threatening to bolt as summer days grew longer, a couple of minutes every day. While producing several heads of produce at the same time is a perfect strategy for market gardeners, it isn't the best path to take for a home gardener who is mainly interested in having a continued harvest for daily consumption. So I decided to sow smaller batches every week or so, as well as diversifying the types of greens I had growing. Arugula is a personal favorite. I love its spicy leaves that just shine when combined with lime juice, olive oil, and salt. I had already sown arugula in early spring and had harvested a portion daily for more than a month. As the weather warmed up, the plants started to send out flower stalks, so I grabbed my arugula seed packet and started to clear a garden spot, temporarily removing the protective mulch layer of dried up and chopped plant matter to sow arugula seeds directly on the ground. I drilled shallow furrows on the topsoil and dropped arugula seeds along this line, trying to distribute them evenly. I knew that they would germinate quickly, especially since the forecasts called for several rainy days to come. My plan was to start harvesting the arugula as soon as small leaves started forming. I think baby arugula tastes better anyways, and since they tend to grow so quickly, picking them young seemed like a no-brainer. After scattering them along the furrows, I gently added some finer mulch material to cover the soil while still allowing the seeds to push through it. As the seeds emerged, I added more and more mulch to help suppress the growth of other weeds. Just a couple of weeks later, I could already start to harvest the first portions of baby arugula leaves. As for growing lettuce during summer, I take a different strategy. I grow them in my cooler, shadier backyard. About 3 years ago, I had spread a thick layer of wood chips over some cardboard to create a planting space without having to dig out the grass. By now, the wood chips were starting to decompose, and it was turning into a perfect spot to grow lettuce during the hot months. With this method known as the Back to Eden style, we usually transplant grown seedlings by opening a hole through the mulch and planting the lettuce starts. Sowing directly onto a thick layer of wood chip mulch is a bit more complicated, since the seeds cannot just be thrown on top of the wood chips. They need to be in actual contact with the soil. The most important thing to remember with the Back to Eden gardening style is that you should never actually mix the top mulch layer of wood chips with the earth, because you can create nitrogen imbalances where the wood chip, because it's high in carbon, will absorb the nitrogen trying to break down. It will release it later, as far as I know, but you might have plants that are deficient in nitrogen or showing stress because of lack of nitrogen. And you want to plant actually on the earth itself, not on the wood chips. So you open up a channel like this, and then you sow your seed if you're going to sow it directly. But I still recommend sowing on cups, so I'm going to try out to see if sowing directly actually works in this system. My strategy was to create these furrows in the decomposing wood chip layer, allowing the seeds sown in the valleys to be more exposed to the light. I was planting them directly onto the soil, which did look rich and felt soft, probably due to all the earthworm tunneling activity trying to break down the abundant mulch layer overhead. I was planning to slowly mound the mulch back around the emerging seedlings as they anchored themselves onto the ground. That would restore the protective function of the wood chip mulch, adding water and suppressing weed growth. Once you're returning the mulch, do not return it all, because the seeds will not be able to germinate through all those layers of mulch. That's the main thing about this method, is that it actually suppresses the growth of seeds. So that's why direct seeding is a problem. Just put a very tiny layer of mulch, and then as the seed sprouts and grows, you can return it. So you have these mounds. I don't know if this is going to work, because this is not advised, but that's why we experiment. It is only through experimenting that we stumble upon new, more clever and efficient ways of doing things. The good thing about this method was that the seeds would have evenly moist soil to germinate in precisely because of the thicker mulch layer around. Of course, I also did plant some lettuce seedlings grown in cups to compare how they fared. I made sure to cover the spot with a cage to avoid groundhogs munching on the growing lettuce. Coming up in the next block, I will show how the lettuce did, right after this commercial. If you enjoyed the videos and would like to support the channel, you can purchase an original painting or drawing in my Etsy shop, or become a patron in my Patreon. As July approached, I had some pea plants which were past their prime. It's time to take out these peas. They have produced well, but their time has come. They're starting to wither and the weather is really getting hot, so I'm going to plant something else. I think this is going to be a good place to try arugula and see how it works during the summer. It gets some morning shade and afternoon shade, just gets sun in the middle of the day, and that might be enough to keep it growing well but not bolt so quickly. With my precious batch of arugula already producing baby leaves, I was thinking ahead, planning to have this fourth batch of the year ready to harvest as the previous batch started to bolt. As summer approaches, sowing quick successions of arugula becomes more vital if you want a continuous supply. It appears that around summer solstice the plants really start to grow fast, putting more emphasis on flowering than on producing larger leaves. Arugula likes colder climates. They do better in places with mild winters, where they can take light frosts. You can also try to grow it under cold frames or in an unheated greenhouse if you have harsher winters like we do in Maryland. With cooler weather, they tend to grow larger leaves and develop a more pleasant taste that is not as overpowering and spicy. They are widely grown and enjoyed in Italy as a winter vegetable, and that makes sense considering their climate. Thankfully, the groundhog doesn't seem to enjoy arugula as much, so I usually do not protect it with cages. After I clear the ground from the dying pea vines, I did the same process of before of broadcasting the seeds. I tried to cover the soil with the little mulch I had left, but I knew this was not enough. Most of the chopped and dropped mulch I spread in the beginning of the season was already decomposed, and I was running low on the new carbon-rich material to add, as well as enough grass clippings. So I did what I could. I chopped and dropped all the nitrogen-rich pea vines and random weeds that were growing there before. Upon her hands she holds the seed to cast it over barren ground. She waits for rain, a storm will come to wash away her grief and pain. I made sure to water the spot well, since with the higher summer temperatures, the soil was liable to dry out and not allow germination. We did end up having rather rainy weeks afterwards, which guaranteed quick germination of the arugula seeds. It also prompted weed seeds to germinate, especially with the less than ideal thinner layer of chopped and dropped mulch. For mulch to effectively prevent weed seeds from germinating, it needs to be at least 3 to 4 inches thick. Of course, that would also prevent the arugula seeds from germinating. That underpins how growing seeds directly onto the ground while using a layer of mulch can be a catch-22. I did what I could to remove weed seedlings by hand as I saw them, but it was a bit of an uphill battle this late in the season without enough mulch material to add. In any case, the arugula plants were growing well, so I was able to go out daily and pick out larger leaves for my salad. While they were a bit more spicy due to the hot weather, they were still delicious. Upon her hands she holds the seed to cast it over barren ground. She waits for rain, the storm will come to wash away her grief and pain. Spring arrives without fanfare, summer sneaks a passing glare. Autumn leaves without a trade, winter holds its long embrace. As for the lettuces sown directly in the woodchip system, they had sprouted, but not very reliably. The same issue of germinating weeds where the soil had been exposed was happening, but at a much slower scale. I tried to pick out the random grass seeds that had germinated around them and spread the wood chips to even out the mulch layer. But I must say that the neighboring lettuce that I had planted from seedlings grown in cups and then transplanted to the spot looked much more vigorous. Some were starting to bolt quicker because we were in late July, but they were still growing better in this system with semi-shade.